Did you know that currently the Earth spins at a rate of 1,038 miles per hour? As the planet rotates around the Sun, this process allows all surface life to receive vital nutrients from the sunlight. This is one of the biggest reasons why the Earth is such a habitable place. The rotation of the planet ensures that we have the cycles of night and day. It also helps to maintain the temperature on the surface. If the Earth didn't rotate, one side of the planet would become a frozen wasteland while the other would be scorched by the sun. Another major benefit of the Earth's rotation is its relationship with tides in our seas and oceans. Current observations show that the rotation of the Earth has been gradually slowing down ever since the planet's creation some 4.5 billion years ago. But have you ever wondered what would happen if it suddenly stopped rotating completely? Stay tuned to find out. Let us first talk about what caused this rotation to start to better understand what would happen if it came to a sudden halt. Scientists speculate that the universe came into existence billions of years ago thanks to a nebula consisting of dust and gas. The nebula then formed the first star of our universe, and the gravity generated by this star caused it to start moving in a circular orbit. As the nebula proceeded to form newer planets, which eventually included our Sun and the Earth, these massive celestial bodies began to rotate as well. Studies state that any clump of mass that forms within that disk is sure to have some sort of natural rotation. As the Sun and planets started to cool down and become more compact, the rate at which they spun on their axis increased even further. This eventually dictated the speed at which and the reason why our planet has continued to rotate for billions of years. Even though the rotation of the Earth may be slowing down, it could take billions of years more for it to come to a complete halt. This means that, realistically, no one living today has to worry about dealing with such a scenario. If, hypothetically, the Earth did stop spinning abruptly, it would throw the world as we know it into utter chaos. There is no way to sugarcoat the fact that almost all human life would perish instantly if the Earth stopped rotating suddenly. The best way to describe the effects of the event on a human body would be similar to being in a severe car crash without having a seatbelt on. When the Earth rotates on its axis once, around every 24 hours, the land on the equator moves with it at speeds of 1,038 miles per hour, with the rotational velocity decreasing to zero as it stretches to the poles. If the planet suddenly stopped rotating, anything not nailed to the surface, especially around the equator, such as rocks, water, and even air, would continue moving due to angular movement. This would cause everything from buildings to humans and animals and even the water in the ocean to be thrown sideways at violent speeds, causing unimaginable destruction and changing the entire landscape of the planet in an instant. The first cause of this unparalleled destruction would be supersonic winds of around 1,000 miles an hour. The effects will be strongest towards the equator, but places out of the supersonic zone would still experience winds twice as powerful as the most powerful tornadoes ever experienced. As you can imagine, the devastating impact of these winds would topple skyscrapers and rip everything in its path to shreds. After the initial chaos, things on the planet would continue to get even worse for any surviving life. The current rotation of the Earth generates a centrifugal force, which is the reason for a significant bulge of water around the equator. If the planet stopped spinning, this bulge would begin to flatten out, and the water would quickly spread across the planet towards each pole. Since the centrifugal force keeping this body of water contained on the equator would no longer exist, large tsunamis would rage across the planet on both sides. This water would flood into the Arctic and Southern Oceans, flooding any land on both sides of the planet which are not directly on the equator. This would result in one ring-shaped body of land stretching across the entire planet. Countries in North America, like Canada, as well as all of Northern Europe and Asia, would disappear into the depths of the ocean. Spain would be one of the few European countries left standing, while down south we would see Australia merge with Indonesia and New Guinea. With the Earth no longer rotating on its axis, a day will no longer be 24 hours long. It will now take 365 days for one day to pass on the new Earth. This is because the planet would become tidally locked without rotation. One side of the Earth would constantly face the sun, which would eventually scorch the surface and make life impossible. It would always be daytime on this side of the planet, while in contrast, the other side will always stay in darkness, away from the warmth of the sun. This would cause it to turn into a frozen wasteland. Hypothetically speaking, the only somewhat habitable part of the planet would be a very thin line running across the middle of the planet, dividing the two extreme temperature zones. That's not all, though. Without rotation, the protective magnetic field helping the planet against cosmic rays would eventually decay and disappear. In time, this would cause our atmosphere to disappear as well, leaving no chance of survival for any surface-dwelling Earthlings. As you may have guessed by now, if this hypothetical event came to be a reality, not many human beings would be able to survive on the surface of the planet. The hypersonic winds, earthquakes, and eventual tsunamis would devastate most life in their path. However, people who are lucky enough to be well underground, especially in subway tunnels, may have a slim chance of survival. The best chance for humanity to survive will probably be scientists and staff who are at the South Pole when the rotation suddenly stops. They probably wouldn't feel any effects of what has transpired, as they would be initially safe from any flooding or winds. The only hint they may have of disaster is the sudden silence from the rest of the world. But eventually, someone would notice that the sun was no longer moving. By then, their fate would already be sealed, as the massive body of displaced water traveling in force from the equator would flood the poles and drown anyone in its path. Even if the rotation of the Earth slowed down at a slower pace, the destruction of life on the planet would still be inevitable. It would just happen at a slower pace than before. Again, the first sign for humans will probably be the fact that the sun takes much longer to travel across the sky. Since the Earth will be stationary, a single day could last up to 6 months in the current time. The human body has grown used to the 24-hour day cycle. Without it, our biological rhythm may be thrown into a frenzy. It has been observed that the cellular process that tells our body when to sleep and wake up is linked to changes in sunlight. Many living organisms depend on this rhythmic behavior to carry out their normal lives, including things like trees and even bees. Changes in these cycles could become a cause for unforeseen issues and changes in behavioral patterns. Thankfully, though, this scenario is only useful as a theoretical exercise, and currently, there is no reason why the rotation of the Earth would come to an abrupt halt. The minor changes in rotational speed observed currently are nothing that can have an immediate negative effect on the planet. Studies show that it would take an amount of energy equal to that which is stored in every moving thing on the planet to abruptly stop it from rotating. No mechanism exists in our knowledge that could allow for something like that to happen. While the Earth could naturally stop spinning, that is not expected to happen for a few billion years yet. And who knows, human innovation by then may have already found a solution to this eventual problem, so maybe we don't have anything to worry about at all. We hope you found today's video interesting. Please leave us a like if you did, and remember to hit that subscribe button for more fascinating videos about the wonders of the great beyond. Before you go, let us know what your survival plan would be in such an event. Would you opt for an underground bunker, or does traveling to countries on the equator sound like the better option? Please let us know in the comments below.